I teach sports media and communications, and obviously we've talked a lot this semester thus far about two things in particular. One, the power of the internet, and two, the growth and breadth of a little network in Bristol, Connecticut called ESPN, which fittingly was founded almost exactly 30 years ago by the gentleman who's going to talk to you today. It's interesting. I was talking to Dr. Tomasini and Dr. DeProm. What a great opportunity we have here today at the Sports Center. Obviously, some of our classmates can't be here because they're working with the Washington Wizards. To have that opportunity to work with a professional basketball team, or have the opportunity to listen to a gentleman like Bill Rasmussen speak, I think speaks to the quality of VCU Center for Sports Leadership. It's really a unique opportunity for to have him here today, so please welcome Mr. Bill Rasmussen.
I don't know much about microphones and all that stuff. Good morning, and thank you very much for getting up. There are some of you may be thinking this is really early, but it really isn't. I've been up since 5. I slept in this morning. Really, it's an honor to be here, and thank Greg and the staff for inviting me. I have spoken to many groups over the years, and that's a lot of years. 30 years ago was the start of ESPN, but I was around a long time before that. And one of the interesting things that I like to point out is, and I heard Greg the other day, we did an interview, and he was saying to someone in the office, some interns in his studio, you don't know the world before ESPN because they were born after 1980. And I imagine that's true of a lot of folks here in the room. The world before ESPN really was a world that, as you go forward and whatever you're going to do in sports, whether it's broadcasting or coaching or teaching or trainer or sports agents, are there any budding lawyers and sports agents in the audience? It's another area. All of sports and communication seem to have grown together. And when you go back to as far as I go, if you want to go back and talk about living history, a lot of folks don't like to study history because it's in a book. If you want afterwards, we can have some questions one-on-one, and I can tell you a lot of history. Believe it or not, and I find this hard to believe myself, I was born less than 10 years after radio, on the first radio station in the United States, KDK in Pittsburgh, went on the air. Before television, before color television, before the internet, before computers. Consider this, if you will, all of you today, we could sit here today and come up with an idea, we could tell the world about it in the next 30 seconds. When we started ESPN, if you were to transport yourself back to then and say, I want to tell the world about what this great idea is, what would be the first thought? How would you tell the television stations, the newspaper, sports editors, and everyone in the world about this great idea? Today you say, well, I'll post something on Facebook or MySpace, I'll email all my friends, I'll do all this. You know, we had to do lick stamps and put them on envelopes. Number 10 envelopes with a press release in it. Send it out the door. We never knew if anybody opened it. We know that probably 90% of the people didn't open it. We couldn't figure out how to get their attention. So our printer came up with an idea. Our printer was a little off the wall, if you will. And he said, we got to get people to notice this, what you're talking about. So he came up with a number 10 envelope. We put letters about this big, just ESPN. Big, bright letters. Didn't say anything else, just ESPN. We didn't try to sell anything. He said, at least we got people curious enough to ask the question, what is ESPN? Which, by the way, what is ESPN? Does everybody know what ESPN stands for? Yes, sir.
The Entertainment Sports Programming Network.
Got it. You know why it's the Entertainment Sports Programming Network?
Why not?
Because a friend of mine started the Satellite Programming Network just before we came up with the idea for sports, and we couldn't need a sports program in it. And we thought, sports entertaining, let it eat in front of it. Part of that story is, just to digress for a moment, it was extremely, extremely expensive to do animation. We wanted to do something to show what we were going to do at a cable television trade show. In Connecticut, the Connecticut Natural Gas Company was running a promotion called the Energy Savings Program. Energy Savings Program. E period, S period, P period. And the fellow that worked at the agency said, you know, I'm really into sports. I really want to work with this idea that you've come up with and talk about sports. And so I said facetiously, I tell you what, you know that animated graphic that you have for your client, Connecticut Natural Gas? We had no money. We couldn't conceive of putting together a graphic like that. I said, if you can get permission from Connecticut Natural Gas, let us use the video portion only. Obviously, we weren't going to sell Connecticut Natural Gas. And we can use that to go with our ESP, and we'll add N for network. We'll give you a job. Come on to work for us. He called up the next day and said, when do I start? Because he got permission to use it. And our very, very first video look at what was to become ESPN literally was a ripoff of Connecticut Utility and this ESP floating around the world, and then our audio dubbed over was ESPN, you know, Total Sports, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But because they had an E period, S period, P period, our first stationary was just that, we just added the word network at the end. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself.